Forgiveness isn't meant for the situation or the person that wronged you. Forgiving allows us to heal and push forward and free up the mental and emotional space that it takes up in our minds. Because by holding on to those situations, those experiences, it takes up space in our minds, and whenever we recall those events, we get emotional, we get angry, we get upset, we get hurt, right? And so, while I understand that people have wronged you and people have wronged me, and many people to the extent where you have severe trauma because of those things, by holding on to those events and those circumstances, we give those people power over our lives and our reactions. And maybe you're thinking, no, maybe it doesn't, but, or, maybe assertive, no, it doesn't, right? Whenever you think about a person other than loved ones, like just a normal person on the street, it's just like a high and by thing, right? No emotion associated with it, and no specific outcome that you want with that person. And then you think of another person, maybe you care about them, maybe you don't care about them, maybe you used to care about them, but you have that anger and that hatred and that hurt towards them, and they're not treated as a normal positive figure or just a neutral figure. That takes up space in our mind, and negative energy spreads, but also negative energy is draining. And let's be honest, we don't really want people to control our lives, right? Or maybe some people do. It just depends on the person. But by holding on to those experiences and that pain, it for one, it gives them power over us without them even trying. But then it also trains you more than you need to be trained, especially if you're planning to grow and do something great. And so a story to enlighten the subject on me: when I was younger, I was adopted by my grandmother, and we lived in that house. We lived in I think I lived like 7, 8 years there, something like that. And while I was there, the first few years are fine, but as we got into high school, it got more intense, more aggressive. I'm an independent person, always have been. I always I like to try and do my own things. And I question a lot, which is where some of these episodes have come from. But I question a lot, and I like it. I like to learn. And if I can figure out something in a way to simplify it for other people, I do that. And so, because I'm hard-headed like that and stubborn, I had a different kind of interaction with my grandmother than my other two siblings. And so for me, it felt like I wasn't able to do anything outside of school and outside of tennis. And tennis was fine, that was my escape, that's what I considered my escape. And I actually got really good at tennis. But outside of that, I couldn't do anything. And I felt like not only could I not do anything, but I also felt like I wasn't heard. And if I was going to be heard, I had to try really, really hard to be heard. And so, after all these growing up, I never really understood why that was. And me already going through different anger management classes, not classes, but like a counselor that would come to the house after we got adopted and talk to us and stuff like that. I had anger issues. Reasonably, when you go through that and you're taken away from your home multiple times and ultimately settled somewhere, we probably expect to have a couple of anger issues, right? So, and everyone reacts differently. That's just how I reacted. And after going through that, I never really understood why she was the way that she was, and all I wanted was to be a child and have that childhood where I could have friends, I could do some sleepovers, stuff like that. And it's not simple stuff, I was a kid back then, right? So you can't expect nothing too crazy out of me, but in terms of that was my freedom, and I didn't feel like I had that. And so after a while, it finally dawned on me what was really going on. And I started to not just see my perspective, but also saw her perspective. What place she was coming at. Like she cared. She was showing that she cared. She was showing it in her own way. And by any means, this doesn't excuse the behavior that was done to us and how we were treated. But if you take it in a different perspective, she did what she thought she was doing out of love. And that's a different way to look at it. And so, once that hit me, I'm like, oh, this is a little bit different. And this was probably around the time I was either 17 or, it was probably around when I was 17, and I was, I left at 17 as well. Or I left at 18, but I graduated, and my birthday's in July, so graduated at 17, and I already had this plan to leave. So that's what the plan was. And by this time, my anger had kind of gone away, and I understood different perspectives other than my own at this point. And it dawned on me, like, in her life, especially with her previous kids, there was a lot of situations that she couldn't control. And ultimately, she probably doesn't feel like her kids did have the best childhood or the best life. And reasonably, considering one of my parents comes from that, and I know the backstories and stuff, I can understand that, right? And she did what she thought she could do that would change that outcome with the second set of kids, which is me and my siblings. And so, while I don't condone the what happened, I understand why it happened. And all of a sudden, once I understood, that anger kind of left me. And again, around this time, I was old enough to see that perspective. And all that hate and anger that stirred in me for years, and just wanting to be a child, wanting to be free, it just was gone in an instant. And I actually, to this day, that I can't tell you the exact day that this happened on, but all of a sudden the anger just left me. And it changed so dramatically that it went from the anger to a love for my grandmother, and a love that wanted to not only be there for her, but to help her realize that she can change and live a better life than what her past had showed her that was true to her. And so, to this day, I have not accomplished that goal of helping her change, but I do still carry that dream. And I hope that one day I am able to fulfill that dream, at least before she dies. Because I don't think that anyone should have to live in just that much miserable mindset the entirety of their lives, especially as they're coming to the last half of it, last quarter of it even. I think it should be changed. And so that's one of my big drivers. And I'm not saying that kind of understanding is going to happen with every every situation that you decide to forgive. But in this case, that is what happened with me. It went from an anger and a hatred to, once I understood, again, I didn't excuse the behavior, but I understood, and I grew a love for her because of what she tried to do. And bear in mind, I would never live with her again, but I do have a love, and I want to help her change, and I haven't done a very good job of that. And maybe I will in the future. But with relationships and friendships and even family, the outcome I had won't always be the same. But understanding helps to move us along the line in forgiveness. And sometimes understanding might even be enough for you to let go. And if you're able to reach that point of understanding, then by all means, do what you can do. But also, finding a positive and a negative experience is a good way to approach forgiveness. And I talked about this before as well. If you can take a negative experience, you have a negative story that you tell yourself, and find something positive out of that experience, you can have an emotional disconnect from the negative. And even though it's still there and you're like, yes, I did feel horrible in that moment, now you're associating it with something positive and you're able to grow. And I think that's a good way of approaching forgiveness is, can you learn something positive about it and then be able to let go of it? And if you associate something positive with a negative experience, it's kind of hard to see it negatively, right? Because you're not associating it negatively anymore. You've got something positive. You benefited out of it and ultimately able to move your life forward. And that's the goal, right? We want to keep moving forward no matter what, even if we get setbacks along the way. And we're all humans, so our lives are full of setbacks and move forwards and stuff like that. But if we can just keep trying to put a step forward, it helps us in the long run. And so, again, not to say that this is how every situation with forgiveness will work out for you. It just happened to be so with me. It went from anger and hate to resentment to love and wanting to help and joy. And so while that might not be your experience with forgiveness in the future, I just want you to know that it wasn't for her that I forgave her. It was for me so that I could grow and so that I could learn. And I also understood. And then I actually was able to find a love for her rather than hate and anger for her. And if you can do that for yourself in any situation that you go into, you might find that a lot of situations that you've gone through and a lot of situations that you will go to into the future can just kind of drift away. And you're able to focus on more positive things. And so if this is able to help you, like this experience helped me, if you want to share and give this out to others to help them grow as well in their forgiveness. And if it makes sense to you, then, if you know someone like this, offer that help to them as well and see if you can bring some light to their situation, right? And that's all I really care about, is just helping. And so if we can do that and help more people forgive, then maybe a lot of this anger in the world will go away. But until then, we just keep fighting, right?